Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn, ads.com today.
Dearest fantasy readers, welcome to the Dear Fantasy Reader podcast, where two best friends, Hannah and Karen, travel through the pages of our favorite romantasy novels. Join us as we take flight into the world of the Empyrean series, diving deep into the chapters, exploring characters, scenes, theories, foreshadowing, and more, taking what we've learned from the second book, Iron Flame, to reread and re-experience the first.
With that content warning and spoiler alert, we will be covering anything and everything Empyrean series to this date and any content Rebecca Yarros has given us. Also, due to the nature of these books, this podcast is rated R in content and in language.
As Rebecca Yarros says, readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note and prepare to enter Baz Guyot War College. It's always so fun to say.
It is.
Whew. Okay, what a weekend we have had. We went to the first ever Romantasy Book Con and could not say better things about our experience. It was incredible getting to meet other romantasy readers who are as passionate about the genre as we are. Incredible. If you would like to know more about our experience, you can check it out over on our Instagram. We are continuously posting all about it. So it was just so fun. But now jumping right into our summary report of chapters 28 and 29 from our personal scribe informant, Karen.
It has been 2 days since Violet fled Montserrat, and she is waiting first thing in the morning outside of Professor Markham's office for word on whether or not Mira is alive. Xaden joins her, and they talk about how things have changed between them, and how Xaden can't stop thinking about doing more than just kissing her. Just as Violet learns how to speak to Xaden through their bond, Dane shows up, followed by Professor Markham. Violet pries the information out of him. Mira is alive! Violet barely holds herself together long enough to make it to Andarna before she feels safe enough to break down. As time passes, Violet asks Xaden questions, attempting to get to know him better, like if he has siblings and where the silver scars on his back came from. Then, the first battle of War Games begins. Fourth Wing, Second Squad is tasked with capturing a crystal egg from First Wing, all while defending Fourth Wing's flag. Taryn and Xaden present the saddle that they designed for Violet, which allows her to keep her seat as she flies. During the battle, they spot First Wing guarding the egg, but the dragons are out for blood. Jack jumps off the back of Liam's dragon, Day, and thrusts a sword into Liam's side. Liam falls off his dragon, but Violet channels Andarna's power, stopping time and saving him. Overcome with rage, Violet summons a lightning bolt that slams into the tower, and Jack tumbles down the mountainside under the avalanche of rock that Violet thinks he cannot survive.
Didn't we all?
Finally, Violet has officially manifested her signet, and Taryn proudly exclaims, "Lightning Wielder!" Contrary to the success of winning the first war game, Violet struggles to come to terms with manifesting a destructive signet with being a weapon and using it to kill someone, even someone as horrible as Jack. Dane attempts to coddle her by saying she doesn't have to use her signet, but Xaden steps in and explains that yes, she does, but that she can use her signet to protect others, and also reassures her that killing Jack was the right thing to do. Rhiannon asks Violet how she and Taryn were able to catch Liam at an impossible speed, but Violet cannot reveal dragon secrets, so guilt aside, she does not tell her. Later, while the rest of Fourth Wing is out celebrating, Violet is in her room aggressively launching daggers at a wooden target. Xaden comes to check on her, explaining that he couldn't stay away. They discuss the guilt that comes with killing someone, Violet's fear of killing Jack changing her, and how she hoped for the power to mend, not destroy. Xaden tells Violet to do what she needs to do to get the anguish out of her system. Taking his advice, she chooses to kiss him.
Yay! Finally! Okay.
Here we go.
A cliffhanger, but we're rolling with it. Drum roll, Dragon Riders, as we are officially starting war games, wielding lightning and killing Jack for all of 3 seconds. Diving right into our analysis and discussion section, where we begin in front of Professor Markham's office to find out if Mira is alive.
Woo! So, it's been 2 days at this point since Violet and her squad left Montserrat. Can you imagine going that long wondering if your sister was still alive after you were forced to leave her in a deadly attack? Because I would be furious.
No, I can't. And that's why I sympathize a lot with Violet here, even though she admits that she's placed blame for all the guilt that she's been carrying over it onto Xaden when he was in the right about her needing to leave. I can't actually blame her, because I think this is one of the more realistic emotional responses that she has.
Yeah, honestly, me neither. And she thinks that Xaden was basically toying with her attraction for him to just get her out of there. But as we now know from Xaden's chapter 27 POV, he was just truly scared of her dying, and he kissed her like it was the last time.
Yeah, that context really changes this scene for me. So before we got Xaden's POV, we can infer that he was concerned and cared for her, showing up outside of Markham's office first thing in the morning with coffee, which shows how well he's coming to know her. Of course, she's going to be there first thing in the morning, and he's meeting her where she is. But I think, especially knowing that he had just had that conversation with Sigale, leaving Montserrat, about how he better hope that Mira lived so that Violet would forgive him. Just knowing that that is a little bit of the motivation behind him showing up for her just makes it better.
Yeah, it really does. And this context changes it for me too. I mean, to be fair, you and I are Xaden lovers and Xaden defenders. So,
Yeah.
I think that we both thought that his intentions were already good whenever he showed up with coffee for her. That extra context just makes it so much more meaningful.
Yeah, and I think, does it make it a little more selfish of him? But to me, somehow that is more meaningful. I don't know. Maybe it's reverse psychology on me.
Yeah. Like I said,
defenders.
Xaden lovers. Yeah. When they're standing in front of Markham's office, Violet does realize that she does not know Xaden as well. Mira's words rang true for her. We get to know a bit more about Xaden here, where he shares that he hasn't slept well since his father left for Orisha, showing us how close they were and just how deeply Xaden has been impacted by the loss of his father. Then Violet asks him his birthday, and we find out that Xaden is an Aries king, which just makes a whole lot of sense coming from another Aries because of his secretive nature his fierce loyalty, and his passion.
Those are very positive Aries traits. I wonder if there's any negative ones that he also
of course.
falls into.
Of course there
are.
are.
I guess the secretive is not necessarily positive, but
passion can go bad too.
Aries are kind of hot-headed sometimes too.
Yeah,
is that
big
the case?
Tempers.
Ooh, I'm very curious to see how that plays out in him being feminine now.
Do you think I have a big temper?
No, I don't think so.
See, I feel like there's the stereotype that we are like big tempered, but I never feel it. I do feel big emotion, get over it just as quickly. So there could be some of that in him too.
Us fire signs over here. I've got plenty of my own stereotypes over in Leo land, but I do have to point out the contrast in Zayden saying he knew when Violet's birthday was that he, quote, made it his business to know everything about her the second he saw her on the parapet.
Woo, hot or creepy?
Hot in a book. Creepy in real life.
Agree.
He explains, quote, can't know how to ruin someone without understanding them first. And this is all in line with both his desire for revenge against Violet, but also because of the deal he made with General Sorrengail. He was charged with her protection. Of course, he would find out everything about her. I'm genuinely surprised, though, that it took her actually being on the parapet for him to go do the work to know more about her, after assumingly that he made that deal with General Sorrengail before. But I guess it wasn't guaranteed she was even going to make it across. So he was like, I'm not putting in the work until I know that you're going to even survive the parapet.
Doesn't he say that too?
He does. He does say something under the tree, right? But that was like when he was still debating.
Later.
He does say something to the effect of like, why would I go through the work of trying to kill you when you might not even survive? And then, of course, Violet asks him if ruining her is still his plan. Mira's words haunting her about her not really knowing him that well. And he says, no. Vi asks, well, what's changed? When exactly he decided not to ruin her? And he says, quote, maybe it was when I saw Oren holding a knife to your throat, or maybe it was when I realized the bruises on your neck were fingerprints and wanted to kill them all over again just so I could do it slowly.
Oh
maybe it was the first time I recklessly kissed you, and when I realized I'm fucked because I can't stop thinking about doing more than just kissing you. Okay. I have several thoughts on this. You guys already know. Okay. Now knowing from his point of view, chapter 27, that he fully acknowledged he loved her at that point in Montserrat, I am now more solidly convinced that he realized he loved her in the moment they first kissed. I would lean that it was in the room with the unbonded cadets as one of the moments that he mentions as things really changing for them. But he tells us in Iron Flame that he's loved her since the first kiss. So I no longer think that any of it was retrospect. I think he realized with the unbonded cadets that he had feelings and realized he loved her during their kiss. And that is why he cut them off from communicating, wouldn't speak to her, and distanced himself, knowing he couldn't have her. And that is officially the timeline I'm convinced of.
Ooh, I'm right there with you. I'm more convinced that he did realize in the moment. I hadn't thought of him first realizing his feelings during the unbonded cadets moment. Ooh.
After his chapter 27, I think he's way more in touch with his emotions than I'd initially interpreted.
Yeah.
But we need to talk about the part where he says he knew when they kissed that he was fucked because he couldn't stop thinking about doing more than just kissing her. That sounds like he means this sexually. At first interpretation, feeding into her idea that this is all sexual attraction and nothing sentimental. But we know that it is sentimental for him, and the romance girly in me fully believes that the doing more than kissing her is not sex, but a reference to his line that he dreams of her being his in some alternate reality. It's just one of those moments that Violet is misinterpreting.
10 steps behind is what she is. And I love that you mentioned that because you're so right, because it's not just physical, it's everything intimate. And intimacy is not just the sex, it is like the relationship, the secrets.
Right.
And
the fact that he is saying those things, and I think he's actually being quite honest with her, which is a gripe she ends up having with him. I don't think she realizes how far back he was being honest. She just interpreted it as a different meaning.
And then Violet finally finds Xaden's bond in her mind. She steps into her mental archives, sees the door where bright orange crackling energy streams in, golden light from the window, and then swirling along the edge of the roofline is a shadow of sparkling night. What an image!
I love this description. I am so confused though. Violet describes the energy as orange, and Darna she mentions as golden separately, right? So it's not in Darna that's orange. Then Xaden is mentioned, as you said, a shadow of sparkling night. But Taryn isn't, so I assume that the orange is his. Why is it orange?
I don't think I really stopped to think about why it was orange. Well, that's a good question. Now it's going to bug me.
Orange is such a strange choice. The only associations that I can think of would be orange dragons.
Yeah.
Or Jack, because he's allergic to them. Neither of which are positive associations, right? Even lightning, she describes as like this whitish blue. I guess she needed to make it different from Xaden's being black, but she says it's sparkling night, where she could have said that Terrence was just like pitch black. Like, that's an intentional choice on Rebecca's part. So if anyone has thoughts on this, please let us know. That's going to be one of those things that haunts me.
The only other thing I can think is fire, but then Andarna breathes fire.
Andarna's is gold.
Yeah.
But that makes sense because she's a golden Feathertail at this point. And when Violet channels her Feathertail time power, it's golden. She feels gold power come through her. So that representation aligns. Nothing about Tarn's bond is orange that we know of. Though I guess I need to look back at what color, if it changes in Iron Flame for Andarna. Does it stay gold? I can't remember. But it's just such a strange choice.
I need a moment to fangirl over the use of the telepathic communication in this series. Oh, it is seriously one of my... it's like one of my favorite elements in fantasy books. It is so funny to think about like the spicy convos or even like the fights that could be happening in their head and everyone around them is like oblivious.
Well, we think so, right? That is so strange to me. Every time I read one of these conversations, that they have like thorough conversations where they are staring at each other and everyone around them is just supposed to be oblivious. That can't be the case. Anyways, yes, so we finally are seeing Violet able to mutually speak back to Xaden. And this is where I think, Threshing really picks up where the book gets the most interesting. And then it's like the second half. But after they start to be able to speak telepathically, I need Rebecca to leave that alone. She needs to figure out a way to either leave our dragons alone, keep them bonded so they can maintain this telepathic communication, or give Violet a signet that's intensic so they can keep it up. That's a warning, Rebecca. I'm a very kind one, but please, because it's one of my favorite parts. It's one of my favorite parts of the book, if not like number one. If it could be roped in with the fact that the dragons can all talk too. The telepathic bond communication is my favorite thing about the books. I was so excited to read the scene specifically where she is about to speak to him once she finds him in her mind, and then immediately frustrated because fucking Dane walked up.
Boo!
And just as quickly, Professor Markham appears, and Violet basically has to force him to tell her that Mira is okay, which, another aspect of like brutality. Why was that not a given, that he couldn't just like have nodded at her when he walked up and instead of making her demand it? Anyways, Violet has a physical reaction when she finds out Mira is in fact okay. Her knees giving out, but Dane catches her, and then Xaden disappears. She doesn't see him again after that moment. In Belle Beebe's Xaden POV of Fourth Wing, the fanfic I keep telling y'all about, I didn't even notice that Xaden had disappeared until I read that point of view, because it shows why. He saw the moment with Dane and Violet and was like, you know, she needs space. And then, so in this scene, Violet refuses to show any further emotion, thinking there's only one place I can go, one person who won't chide me for crumbling. And I paused there on my first read and remembered being so confused. I'm like, all right, Xaden's right there. She can't go to Mira. Like, who else? Dane's right there too. Like, Ree, maybe, is kind of what I thought. But then she meant Andarna. And this scene where she goes out to the flight field meadow and Andarna flies in, nudging the back of Violet's hands as she cries into them, is one of my favorite moments of the book. It gets me.
Yeah, it gets me too. But, you know, I will often say something about my dog Lady being my favorite person. So, like, I totally get, like, how you could be like, the person I need. But I think it's telling that Violet thinks of Andarna when she just needs someone to just be with. When she's breaking down just any situation, she just can be with her. They just have an unmatched level of just mutual understanding and just deep care for one another.
They do. And I think it makes it even more impactful that Violet didn't even have to say anything to Andarna on page or like through their bond mentally, directly, right? She just knew and showed up for Violet.
Gonna cry.
I think that we are going to see a lot more of Violet and Andarna's emotional bond growing in Onyx Storm. Violet is Andarna's number one. She exists for Violet and nothing else really matters to her, which is unlike any other character. And of course, Andarna to us, she has agency, but she chooses that. She has waited, prophecy or not, for hundreds of years, specifically for Violet. And I think that's why we get to see Tairn has more things going on in his life.
Yeah.
And Darna's life is Violet and sheep.
Please don't break my heart, Rebecca. Please, not with this.
You totally didn't hear me say and sheep, did you?
And sheep? No, I didn't. Oh my gosh.
Violet and sheep. And eating enemies. Our allies,
you know?
Eating their allies. Anyways.
Oh, goodness. We get some time jumps here, and I just love this little stretch because in the midst of advanced flight maneuvers that Tairn is putting Violet through, even though most third years couldn't do them, because Tairn is preparing her to fight Venin, Violet is now using this telepathy gift to play 20 questions with Xaden. And it's so fun, this little back and forth.
Yeah, and I the contrast in like this war college and she's playing 20 questions is really funny. She starts with lighter questions like favorite food, which is chocolate cake, and that comes back up in Iron Flame. But then she tests Xaden to see if he will let her in, asking how he got his scars. And she pushes him on it until he and Sigale abruptly fly off.
This just shows that it's obviously a super touchy subject. And Violet even says she knew the scars were private, but this just shows there's more to it than just a painful memory. which we know was the deal he made with General Sorrengail.
Right. And it's touchy because this was something done to him, which if we really think about it, he was forced to make that deal. It wasn't a fair or fully consensual deal, even though it takes two parties to make one. It was literally that or they die. Even the fact that it is a Tirish custom, it doesn't make it consensual. It doesn't make it better. It might give General Sorrengail a little grace for like the avenue she chose. It doesn't sound as harsh than like slashing him, right? Outright. But this was all something that he didn't have any control over. Of course it's touchy.
And then Taryn essentially tells Violet to stop pushing him because he cares for you, and that is already hard enough for him. You mentioned previously that you thought Taryn and Sigale purposefully didn't shield Xaden and Violet out. This might have convinced me because Taryn would so have a Team Xaden shirt if he could.
You know what? You're right. But he can't wear shirts. So like maybe we could, he could embroider his saddle. Team Xaden.
Team Xaden.
But you know, Taryn is very discerning. That's what he's known for, as being that rare black dragon. And we get to see that in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to things like Xaden and morals. And I wonder if he will advocate for Xaden in Onyx Storm, because yes, it was a morally gray decision, but it was still moral.
Yeah.
Like advocate for Xaden to both Sigale and Violet. On the other hand, if Naolan had turned Venin, then that may not be the case, since Taryn is clearly very traumatized by whatever Naolan did.
He's so protective of Violet. That could be so right that he could advocate for Xaden because of the reasoning behind it. That's his girl.
Right, but then it would take him understanding why Xaden did it for Violet. The idea is that if Naolan turned Venin, he did it for love for Brennan.
Yeah.
So it's like, if Taryn is so messed up by that decision, that might actually translate into him having not as much patience and understanding, or it means that he has more than anyone else could. And that's why he struggles so deeply, because he could out Naolan for being Venin. He could tell people, but then he doesn't. So maybe it's because he is so understanding of the fact that he did it for love. Ooh.
But also, Naolan was his. Xaden is not his.
Yes, but he's his mate's. And then he's Violet's. It was for his rider. Does that make sense? So I wonder, it could just, no matter what, Taryn is going to play a role in advocating for or against Xaden. And it will, if Naolan is Venin, have a lot to do with that.
Yeah. It is now time for the first battle of the annual War Games. And just a quick overview, War Games are a series of events that take place in the spring, and all cadets from each wing participate. The first battle ends up being like an extremely high stakes capture the flag. It's 4th Wing versus 1st Wing, which includes Jack Barlow. And importantly, during War Games, anything goes. 4th Wing's 2nd Squad is assigned to defending 4th Wing's flag, but they are also on offense with the rest of 4th Wing, tasked with finding the crystal egg that 1st Wing is defending. Apparently, this was Xaden testing Dane to see if he learned anything from Mira's lesson in Montserrat, and Violet does comment later that it seemed like Dane did.
Giving him the small bit of props that we are willing.
He thought about their signets and everything, which was good.
The bar is in hell. We finally get to see him start to lead, though. Yeah, but we've complained that up until this point, we really haven't. And I guess we didn't really see a ton on page, but like somehow they do make it successfully, you know, which I think has more to do with Violet than it actually has to do with Dane. But
he was there.
Yeah, he was there. So again, the bar's in fucking hell. Now, before the game starts, they arrive to the flight field to find Taryn wearing a saddle. to help Violet keep her seat without draining Taryn's power to hold her in place, which I love. And as cool as I think it is, I only truly understood the message of this scene when I heard Rebecca say in an interview that I will try to track down for you all, that she, as someone with EDS, personally struggles with when to accept needing accommodations and how difficult it can be to do that. So when Violet is arguing here about how everyone will essentially judge her for needing a saddle to stay on, even though they already know she can't stay on, it's really an internal struggle just as much. It's important context.
This is one of the more realistic parts of this book, even though it's a saddle on a dragon, because Violet needs an accommodation, which is not a reflection of her skills or anything that she can control. But I imagine it is difficult for someone with a chronic illness to grapple with. So thank you for including that interview, because I do think this was a really important insight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the reasons that I love to listen to Rebecca's interviews, because I think that she has messages in there that if you don't know that Violet has EDS, it's maybe more difficult to understand Violet's perspective on things and how that can translate to real life lived experiences. We do see Violet come around to her saddle and the idea of it as an accommodation pretty quickly, thinking that if she could have a saddle, then Andarna could coat her shiny gold scales in mud for protection. This also lends to how much Violet and Andarna are able to understand each other on a deeper level than anyone else, which, again, I think will intensify in Onyx Storm.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that Violet was able to get to this point because of how each of the other characters navigated being supportive of the saddle in a way that was enthusiastic but not demanding, like they knew better than her and that this was something she just needed to accept. Specifically, Taryn being 1,000% confident and cocky, holding his head up high, showing just how well he knows her. He had more than enough confidence for the both of them, gave zero fucks about perception. They shared this really special moment when he explains to her that it is up to an individual dragon on the accommodations that they are willing to take for their riders, that she has worked hard, if not harder, than every other rider in the quadrant to keep her seat, that, quote, it takes more than a few strips of leather and a pommel to define a rider. The support.
I love him so much for all of that. You've worked harder than everyone else here. The acknowledgement of that had to have meant so much and make it easier for Violet to accept that.
We talk about how much we love Taryn as a character and how much we love his sassiness, but he also balances really well with his serious moments.
Yeah.
He's confident, he's cocky, and he's self-assured, I think is the best way to phrase how he is right here. And we do see him become sassy, but with Violet, he chooses wisely, is discerning on when it's going to be effective to be direct or sassy. I love to see that.
He is 100, so he's wise. And of course, we have to talk about how special it is that Xaden had the saddle made for Violet. This goes back to the conversation with Mira in Montserrat, where she told him that if he wanted her to trust him, he would help Violet find a way to keep her in her seat. And now he officially has. At the very least, it motivated him to think outside of the box. But we also know just how important it was for Xaden to do it anyway without her instruction to keep Violet safe.
I really loved how he and Taryn interacted here. The cute banter about Xaden pinching Taryn's scales. Dragons do not let anyone near them like that, nor do smart riders take that risk. But they were both willing to do that for Violet.
Is a huge, mature display of priorities on both of their parts. And we love to see that. Like, snaps for them.
Snaps, snaps, snaps. We also get some development in Violet's feelings for Xaden in this whole stretch, too. First, we see her flirting telepathically with Xaden as he's in his War Games leadership meeting. And she thinks to herself, it doesn't really bother her that she's flirting so directly. Progress. Then she drops the info about how distance affects her ability to hear Xaden, what that means for when he graduates, and her chest aches at the thought of him not being near, which I think is an interesting parallel to how Xaden just reacted to distance last chapter in Montserrat.
Now, this convinced me even more that they could also be fated mates, especially with this causing her physical chest aches.
She physically reacts to him a lot. I don't know if that's just like Rebecca's writing style. I like it, but it seems so emphasized that, yeah, I'm right there with you. But then Xaden, knowing Violet was torn about the saddle, makes a flirty and direct comment about wanting to kiss her. And she basically calls his bluff about doing that in front of people. And we have to talk about what he says next. Quote, "When did I ever give you the impression that I give a fuck what people think about me? I only care what they think about you." And then Violet thinks to herself, because he's a wing leader, nothing is worse than cadets gossiping that you've slept your way to safety. Fair point. It's just not all-inclusive. This has been an idea that Rebecca has threaded all throughout Fourth Wing, but now we know and can understand that it's so much more than that, which was really emphasized for us in his POV, Chapter 27. He's not just her wing leader. He is a marked one, the marked one, a leader of a revolution, so essentially the traitor that everyone perceives him to be. Now, Violet doesn't know the latter, but she does know he's a marked one and how they're perceived. So it's interesting that she only considers his rank when thinking about that.
I think that she has grown so far past seeing the marked ones as traitors' sons and daughters. So maybe that's why it's all she really thinks about or considers in this moment.
Right, but she's talking specifically about perception, not how she sees the marked ones, but how everyone else will perceive her dating a superior, which would actually be way less of an issue than her dating a superior marked one specifically as she's the daughter of the general. So just, it's not a big deal that she doesn't notice that. It's just more context for us to consider from Xaden's perspective of why. Because it's not as meaningful to me that he just doesn't want to lean into their romantic whatever because he's a wing leader. It's actually so much deeper knowing that that goes past school, right? That's like no matter where they go in the future, to his understanding right now, they still are going to be on Navarre's side for years. Like the revolution isn't happening for years. The first war game officially begins, and Violet and Taryn take flight. And this is one of my favorite scenes because, one, powers and flying, but mostly because Violet no longer has to worry about falling off mid-flight. She finally lets go, has her arms outstretched completely free. She thinks, quote, "Without even grounding in my archives, power surges in my veins, crackling with a life of its own." So Violet's signet didn't just manifest as she understands it in this chapter because of her intense emotion from Liam and Jack, which we will get to shortly. It was accessible to her because she finally let go, just like she did on a little smaller scale when she first actually manifested her signet during her kiss with Xaden.
She has consistently been too in her own head and worried about just not dying by falling, which has hindered her from being able to use her signet. And Taryn is also no longer using his power to hold her in place, so that adds to her power.
Oh, I did not think about that part. God, that's a good point. It was the perfect storm. Pun intended. This bliss is quickly interrupted when they find some of First Wing guarding the crystal egg, and those dragons start attacking with fire. So, quick note, yes, the war games are deadly, but Violet is shocked that the dragons would be out for blood. This is important because all of these dragons know each other, but clearly do not all get along, nor do they value the lives of other dragons over this game. Especially Tarn, the most powerful and intimidating dragon, and one they typically pay deference to be attacking him outright like this it's crazy.
Yeah, it truly is wild that they are so ready to take the kill with each other. If I was a dragon on the other squad, I would want to steer clear of Tarn because he is that powerful. But this definitely shows the variation of morality of the dragons, and we know that they are able to pick sides, Navarre or the revolution, and I wonder if that is a factor in this to like or dislike each other.
I think that would actually make a lot of sense because at this point, all of the dragons know about Venom. They know who their actual enemy is, who the danger against them is. The humans don't. Even then, the dragons likely don't know the extent of the revolution's progress just yet. But if I'm Tarn and feel strongly in favor of the revolution, I imagine that would create a lot of tension and animosity for the dragons that feel very strongly in favor of Navarre. And the choices that they're making, all of it comes down to the sides of it is about the best way to protect the dragons as we understand it. Also, these dragons range up to 200 years old. They are bound to have some conflict over the years. I just thought it was interesting that they were trying to actually take each other out. That seems like not the dragon way. In Iron Flame, remember how much it scarred Andarna? And Taryn called her Dragon Slayer. And I don't think that they're stupid enough to think that they could have actually taken Taryn out. It's just all to say that's a pretty big deal. It just gives another glimpse. We have very few clues into the dragon's actual dynamics. So we're taking what we can out of it, but interesting to think about. Now, this next scene is really hard for me to reread and even talk about knowing what is coming. But Jack jumps onto Day's back and stabs Liam. Liam then free falls from Day's back. Taryn and Violet race after, but Violet knows that they will not reach him in time, so she asks Andarna for permission to use her gift to stop time long enough for them to catch Liam, nearly escaping the death of all of them. This understandably enrages Violet, who nearly lost her everything good and pure friend to the same man-child who has done his best to kill her at every opportunity. But it took Jack coming after Liam for Violet to absolutely lose her shit. And boy, does she, in the most satisfying way. Kind of. For like a book, you think it is. She throws her hands forward and thinks, quote, "I am the sky and the power of every storm that has ever been. I am infinite." A scream rips from my throat just as lightning splits the sky with a terrifying crack of thunder. The bluish streak of silver death slams into the tower, and sparks flare as it explodes in a blast of stone. The power girly in me. Oh my God, I love this scene and this description. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh. Same. It's almost hard to talk after hearing you reread that description. I love it. Such good writing. But I find it fascinating that Violet's signet is so deeply tied to her emotions, which we saw when she first kissed Xaden, but she was still mentally blocking it. And now with her saddle freeing her, combined with the intense emotions of fear and anger over Liam and Jack, this marks the second and obviously more powerful manifestation of power.
Oh, yeah. And this is literally just the untrained, unevolved version of Violet. Imagine when she gains control of her emotions and her signet and trains it and evolves, how powerful she will be then. I really struggled with like how long it's taking her to be able to utilize her power through 2 books now. I cannot wait for book 5. She is going to be a menace, and I cannot wait.
I hadn't thought about how good she'll be at it then.
Think about all the things that are supposed to get better over time. Their bond, the ability to speak over distance, Rebecca willing we get to keep all of our dragons. So then that would mean that across the world, they could still communicate telepathically at some point. Like all of those things are going to be so fun to read. And I get why she only can do it for like a book or 2, but for like evolution and development and stuff like that, because it's a series, but I can't wait. It's probably going to be my favorite book.
And then also not just lightning, the pure power thing.
Yeah, what does Rebecca get creative with and how does she use it? Because we get to see these like little bursts of energy, but I'm really curious to see like, I wonder if, oh my God, I just had an epiphany. And okay, it happened at this moment. So there's been speculation that Violet's second signet is amplifying. Do you know how we connected that when Violet first started to channel, she called it energy. She is raw magic is her power, right? And we can call it energy. What if it's actually her energy signet, which we can think of as raw power, that is actually what amplifies other people's signets and not a second signet?
Ooh.
So she's basically like, clearly not doing it intentionally, so it's not really draining her like a signet would. That'd be really fascinating because Rebecca's already kind of set the foundation indirectly that she is the purest form of the magic that dragons channel.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I really hope that that's the case. That would be so fun to read, especially if her second signet is underwhelming, like supposedly Rebecca has said, to really lean into all of the powerful things that she could do with her first. So I'm curious because we've mentioned before, they don't have electricity, so it's not really like they can necessarily do that. But it's more than just her using it on a conduit. So it's fun to think about what that will.
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh, that's so exciting. Okay. I hope that we find a little bit more about it in Onyx Storm, though. Like, I hope we're able to see glimpses into that. And that Rebecca's not saving it for later books. Okay, jumping back into this book, this chapter, this scene, the fact that it concludes with Tarn, quote, roaring with the unmistakable sound of pride, and then declaring her lightning wielder. Oh, it's so good.
So good.
On that exact topic about Violet actually being more than a lightning wielder, actually an energy wielder, I have to point out how when she is about to throw the lightning strike, she thinks, quote, that sizzle of magic grows to a lethal, swirling vortex of energy. That was an Easter egg that her signet was more than just lightning.
Absolutely, it was. And it makes me wonder if Taryn knows that her signet is more than a lightning wielder, or does he learn that when she does?
I really don't want to think that Taryn knows even more than he already has chosen not to share with her, especially considering that's information she would need to have to be able to hone her signet more, to be a more effective fighter and to stay alive, which is something that is going to be a goal of Taryn's. And also, he's only 100, and Dane goes on to say that it has been more than a century since the last lightning wielder, which we will come back to in our theories and Easter egg section. I think that there's both limited knowledge on the difference and benefit to Taryn telling her if he did know. So I know I don't think he does.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
I really, really need Taryn to stop. Just stop keeping things. Now, Jack falls with the avalanche of rock, and Violet is certain he cannot survive this, taking Babe's cry as confirmation. But we now know that Jack did not fucking die, like she thought. And that Jack was then in here, which was likely how he was able to survive the fall. Rebecca said in an Entertainment Weekly interview that, as a general rule, anyone who is said to be dead is dead, but that she, quote, laid in the foundation that Jack wasn't dead, end quote, by not including his name on the death roll. This was not obvious to us because the death roll that Jack would have been on never happened on page, and Rebecca quickly distracted us with Spice. But you would think that Violet would have picked up on the fact that Jack's name was not on the death roll. But again, she is torn up pretty badly over this, so I guess that we can chalk it up to that. But I feel like that's actually more the reason why she'd be specifically listening out for his name.
Yeah.
No matter what, Rebecca just needed to pull one over on us. And
she did.
She did. Boy, did she.
And this was one plot twist that I would have never been able to guess. And it's just wild because I'll speak for myself. I was really bamboozled.
I was too. No, I was too.
Okay, good. Everyone kept saying he was dead, so we just believed them and we assumed that he was dead. Since it didn't register to Violet that his name hadn't been read off on the death roll, it didn't register to us either.
Right. She was doing mind work, which we will also come back to. So Violet lands back at the flight field and is immediately disgusted with herself for manifesting a destructive signet rather than a helpful signet like Brennan's, and for her first act with her power being to kill someone.
Our tender-hearted Violet, who has spent every moment up until this point never taking the kill shot, even to those who might deserve it, and she's very broken over being the one to actually kill Jack. I cannot even imagine being in Violet's shoes here because I think I would be just as distraught as she is, even though Andarna, Taryn, and Xaden are all trying to give her reassurance. Xaden even goes on to tell her the world is a better place without Barlow in it. None of it makes her feel better because she doesn't care that he's gone. She says that I'm mad that him dying changes me.
Yeah. And I really appreciated this inner conflict because as much as I wished on my first read that she would just lean into the excitement for her new power and how it's pretty badass, I also think it was so true to who Violet is to feel this way and to be so conflicted. And it's definitely a learning curve reframing from seeing herself as a weapon for evil to a weapon for good. Yeah. Because no matter how you cut it, there are weapons on both sides. So at least she has the means to protect the ones that she loves. Even if she doesn't like how she can do that, at least she can. And I think that that is what Xaden was trying to explain. Violet just wasn't ready to hear it yet, which is understandable given the circumstances.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So we flash forward to Violet playing target practice with her daggers that evening in her room, and Xaden shows up to be there for her. I want to know who Violet was picturing as her target when she tells Xaden it's no one you know. Who would that be?
Great question. And who would Violet hate enough to be picturing as the target?
Right.
Because really, we have no context to this. But maybe we'll find out in Onyx Storm, or maybe it'll go unanswered.
It felt intentionally, because she could have just said, like, no one in particular. You know, but, like, to say that it's no one you know, well, who doesn't Xaden know? Because in my first thought would be a previous ex. But like, why would she be thinking of a previous ex? Or really anyone that Xaden doesn't know here at all, given the context of what she's upset about. It's just strange, but it's one of those things that like felt like an intentional line. Anyways, back to the part about Xaden saying he came to see her because he couldn't seem to stay away while everyone else is out celebrating, which is just one of those moments. But that's not even the best Xaden line, because he goes on to explain how even though she and the marked ones didn't choose the writer's quadrant for themselves, he says, quote, "It's not the same for you. You wanted a quiet life full of books and facts. You wanted to record the battles, not be in them. There is nothing wrong with you. You get to be angry that you killed a man today. You get to be angry that man tried to kill your friend. You get to feel however you want within these walls." Snaps for Xaden. He sees her. He gets her. He loves her. She just doesn't know it yet. And I have to point out something that I just noticed in the moment. He didn't call Liam his friend. He called Liam Violet's friend.
Oh.
And that's very special.
Oh, makes me want to cry. But yeah, I love this so much. He's just validating her feelings and not telling her to get over it. Right. Being loved is just being known, and he's proving here that he knows her.
He is, and I love it. It's so good. Okay. And then, and probably the most positive cliffhanger in this series, Xaden tells Violet to do whatever she needs to get it out. Yell, hit, whatever. And she kisses him.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
How are we supposed to end it like this? I guess it just makes us look forward to what we know is coming in the next chapter. So stay tuned to see
Spicy.
Hannah and I fangirl again. Time to head on over to the healer's quadrant to get a temperature check on our characters' favorite moments and quotes. Starting off with our hot. My hot was Andarna because she is so selfless and just willing to help Violet save Liam, which I love.
Oh, I love that. It's a smaller moment, but it is actually majorly impactful. So props to you for putting her on yours. I just went straight obvious Xaden and Taryn. I think that was clear in how I just really loved how mature they both were. Very demure, very supportive, very considerate, this set of chapters. And I love to see it. I love when we really see the male characters have healthy, mature dynamics and conversations and are supportive.
I love that.
You're not?
For the not, is it too on the nose to say Jack? Because that's who it is for me.
I think it would be weird if we didn't say Jack, especially when it comes to Liam. No, it's not. It is 100% Jack this chapter. Honestly, it's Jack every chapter, but this one like deserves for it to be said out loud. So,
yeah.
Now for our favorite moments. Taryn's unmistakable pride that Vi is a lightning wielder. It gives me chills that he was so immensely proud of her. Because he knew she had it in her, whatever her signet would be. And it's just so good. It's so good. It's so wholesome. And then Xaden, of course, showing that he truly understands Violet with his line about her wanting a life full of books, recording battles and not being in them. The sentiment and understanding behind that is so good. For you?
Yeah, there were so many good moments in these chapters, but mine was Xaden giving Violet the saddle so she could stay on Taryn. And my second was when Violet was sick after killing Jack, And Taryn shielded her so she could get sick and not have all of the other riders staring at her.
That's a good one. That was one of my favorite moments, my first read. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had to read it a couple times to understand what was going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so considerate and just thoughtful of them to do. Oh. And our favorite quotes. We both chose Taryn lines.
But different ones.
Different ones. He has so many good ones, so I'm glad. When Dane asks, is that a saddle? And Taryn says, no, it's a collar. It takes me out with his one-liners.
My favorite was also along the saddle lines whenever he says, I hear it's all the fashion.
He's so sassy.
And then obviously, lightning wielder.
Taryn just carried this set of chapters, honestly, for me.
Yeah.
Now let's stop by the Scribe Quadrant for our epigraph analysis.
Before we jump in, I just want to say one of the reasons I'm so happy we are rereading these books several times and deep diving is because of the epigraphs. It's hard to fully comprehend what they are saying or what they are foreshadowing or warning us about in the coming pages, chapters, or even books on a first read, but you catch so much on a reread. And with that, chapter 28 epigraph reads, winning the war games isn't about strength, it's about cunning. To know how to strike, you have to understand where your enemies, your friends, are most vulnerable. No one stays friends forever, Mira. Eventually, those closest to us become our enemies in some way, even if it's through well-intentioned love or apathy, or if we live long enough to become their villains. Page 80, the Book of Brennan. This means that anyone we know and even love could become an enemy, and no one is safe. Even those closest become enemies in some way.
Yeah, unfortunately, this feels like a neon warning sign that there is going to be a not fun amount of betrayal in the coming books. The line specifically, eventually those closest to us become our enemies in some way, and then going on to say through well-intentioned love and become their villains, all screams Xaden to me. He became the enemy, quite literally, out of love for Violet. So it very much so could have been foreshadowing that, but...
It also connects to the Onyx Storm blurb line. It's impossible to know who to trust, which makes me wonder if we will get a chosen family betrayal in Onyx Storm.
I really hope not, but I think that may be the case.
It's going to destroy me.
Anyways, chapter 29, epigraph. The death of a cadet is an inevitable yet acceptable tragedy. This process thins the herd, leaving the strongest riders, and as long as the cause of death does not break the codex, any rider involved in extinguishing another's life shall not be punished. Major Offendra's Guide to the Rider's Quadrant, unauthorized edition. I am convinced that this epigraph was strategically placed by Rebecca right after we are made to think that Jack died as a way for her to do mind work on us, emphasizing the death of a cadet, knowing damn well she was bamboozling us, that he didn't actually die. And it also shows why Violet wouldn't be punished for Jack's death had he actually died like she believed, because it was during war games, so it was within the codex.
What a sneaky lady.
What a sneaky lady. Such an understatement. Time to join our riot as we take flight into our foreshadowing, Easter eggs, and theories section, including moments that stood out to us during this reread and spiral into theories in chronological order, starting with Xaden and Taryn's secrets. Okay. Violet thinks Xaden is getting more secretive, if that were even possible, canceling some of our training for unexplained reasons Even Taryn feels like there's something he's not telling me. Okay, so that implies that Taryn told her. It feels like there's something Xaden's not telling you, right? Or she asked and he agreed. I wondered at first if this was Taryn trying to get Vi to pry at Xaden about his involvement with the revolution. You know, Taryn does tell us at some point that he wanted Violet to find out on her own. He wasn't going to like tell her himself. He wanted Xaden to do it, but it seemed like way earlier than he actually did, right? But then I realized that these secrets specific to this point could also have just been because Xaden was off designing the saddle for Taryn.
I hadn't even considered it being something that could be this simple as the saddle design.
Well, because we know how many secrets Xaden is keeping.
Yeah.
Right? And we still don't know the extent of the secrets he's keeping. So that line just like makes you start. But then I think it might actually just been a nod to, oh, there's this big reveal coming, and that was the saddle. Yeah. So we thought. Next, when talking about their war game assignment, Liam says that his dragon Day was, quote, going on about getting to kick Gleen's ass. He then paused as if to listen to his dragon talk, and then says, quote, guess dragons hold grudges. Now, this is interesting because Gleen is Caroline Ashton's dragon, who is Jack Barlow's friend that bonded Gleen after his first rider died in flight lessons right after threshing. Here were my first thoughts. This could just be showing that dragons don't all like each other, which we learn very much so in Iron Flame with Taryn and Solus. The way it's worded would make me feel like there's backstory here that would come up later, except that Day and Liam die shortly after this. But it could also be simply showing us that Caroline and her dragon are bad news, which could still come up in future books and could still be the case. But then, as I was rereading the fight scene, I connected that it could have been an explanation for why Jack and Bade went after Liam and Day specifically during the war game. We know Jack and Caroline got super close at some point, enough that she continues to be his right hand after he dies in this scene, standing by him that whole time of healing, which is months. And Violet only arrives to this fight with Jack and Liam in time to see them mid-fighting, right? I'm suggesting that however the fight started was deeper than winning war games, that it was over this grudge. Maybe Bade and Jack knew that Day wanted to attack Gleen, or Gleen attacked them first and Bade and Jack jumped in, or Bade attacked Day outright and unprovoked. No matter which one, any of them could have happened because of whatever history and grudge Gleen and Day held against each other.
Ooh, I kind of forget that Jack actually had friends. Like, strong friends.
Right.
You know, you can't picture anyone just like wanting to be around him, but that shows that he actually formed really strong connections enough to, he was already ruthless and was like willing to kill people, but if your theory is correct, he actually cared about this person and was willing to attack for them.
Right, or was looking for a reason. Right, yeah. And that just happened to be a convenient one. It doesn't really tell us if it's the case much. Like, it doesn't really change much about the story so much as, like, gives a little context to how that fight would have initiated outside. I think she could have gotten away with just it being war games and Jack just being terrible. So it could be this, or it could be a nod to Gleen and Caroline Ashton somehow being, if we think that Day is as pure and good as Liam is because he chose Liam, right?
Yeah.
And Caroline Ashton's dragon did something years back. We'll see. Because unfortunately, Caroline is probably going to be a bigger character. I wonder if Jack talked her into turning Venom. Right? I bet she would. Ooh. Ooh. I wonder how many people he convinced if he did any recruiting. Interesting thought. Okay, next one. When Dane explains that First Wing is guarding a crystal egg, Violet thinks makes sense. It's probably a symbolic nod to the different breeds of dragons bringing their eggs to Basgiath when Navarre unified. And then I realized Andarna would have been one of those eggs. And I don't know why it took this line for that to fully connect for me, but when we think about the history as we know it, General Daramore and his army decimated the Barrens where there were dragons and venom, and the ancestors of Navarian dragons at Basgiath that we know now immigrated to Navarre, establishing the Vale as their hatching grounds and creating the wards with the first six. Because Andarna was in her egg for like 650 years at this point, and this happened around 600 years ago, she would have been somewhere around 50 years old in her egg at that time.
Ooh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That also makes me wonder how many eggs were brought over with them and if any haven't hatched yet.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that it would have been any eggs, right, that were about to hatch. So any of their current, but clearly, I mean, there could have been more. Maybe Andarna was told, this prophecy theory we've talked about, that she had to wait this X amount of time, but was anyone else told that Andarna would be the first and that they would join her after a certain amount of time? I don't know. Because they would possibly know that they would need another seventh breed to get another ward up. So why would they only heap one egg? I don't know. Right.
Whoa.
Then there's also the theory that we're going to have a solution to that through, like, maybe the Isle Kingdoms has the seventh breed over there.
It would also make sense to spread the eggs out if it's the seventh breed so that they're not all in the Vale just in case something else happened to them.
Same logic for not just Andarna, having a couple in case something happened to... Yeah. Whew. We have a lot of points in this section today. So the next one is, we learn that Violet's saddle is made of black leather. To which Violet asks, I thought you said leather was bad. And Taryn responds, the leather is a hazard on my chest if we take a fire attack, since your saddle would slide right off. But if you take a direct blast up there, sitting on a piece of metal isn't going to save you. Which I would like to point out, that's why it was such a big deal that the other dragons were blasting fire at Taryn, because Violet then thinks right after, I don't bother pointing out that the only fire we'd be taking is from other dragons, which is a problem that doesn't exist since griffins are all beak and claw. So that again implies it is not normal for those dragons to be throwing fire at each other. That's not an issue they should be worried about. Of course, though, we now know that that is not the case because Wyvern can breathe fire. Yes, they couldn't use metal for the saddle, but it absolutely sets up for a Wyvern's fire blast to cause the saddle to slide right off. And I feel like Taryn has taken fire blasts to the chest throughout the books at some other points. And if that's the case, it clearly takes a specific amount of fire for it to happen. But I think that that is going to happen at some point, unfortunately. Why point it out? Why couldn't she, like, make up a magical fireproof leather?
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. Next, during the Liam and Jack fight scene, Violet thinks, quote, Bade snaps her tail at Day, the venomous bulb perilously close to Day's throat. End quote. Bade is a scorpion tail. So this tells us that the tip of the tail is poisonous, hence scorpion. We know that dragons choose their tails, and we learn that Andarna chooses to be a scorpion tail in Iron Flame. Now, when asked in her Variety interview why Andarna chose this for her tail, Rebecca said, quote, I'm sure you can put together why it's a scorpion tail. I wanted readers to dig into the choice. She likes it when we interrogate these things. Starting back the quote, so if you are Andarna and you are a feather tail, and you watch the thing closest to you that you love most in the world poisoned by a dagger, would you not become the poison yourself? Whew. It's honestly just the natural progression of the character. This is what she just watched happen. End quote. Ooh, I got chills.
Ooh. I love that you brought that interview up because especially specifically, favorite part of that quote from Rebecca Yarros, the thing that she loves most in the world was poisoned. Like, that's why she would choose that. Oh, wow.
I'm really excited to see how her tail choice plays out in Onyx Storm and subsequent books, and whether or not the poisonous venom can be used as part of this venin cure we're all convinced will save Xaden, because something will, right? Since scorpion venom in real life is actually used in medicine for things like antidotes and cancer. I found that out when I Googled scorpion venom.
Ooh,
yeah.
I had no idea it did that, but we are looking for anything that would be able to cure being venom.
Right. Maybe it makes a little too much sense. Maybe that's too easy.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, how does a vial of venom give you back a part of your soul? So I'm very skeptical about it, but that's just something I found really fascinating when I looked up what scorpion venom can be used for. And next, when Xaden says to Violet, lightning, your signet is lightning, isn't it? I think that there is more going on here than just him having suspected her signet from their first kiss. I think he knows that she will be able to kill Venom. Xaden is described as looking at Violet, quote, as though my answer is the key to whatever he needs. What does Xaden need most outside of information and the ability to keep secrets? A weapon against Venom for the revolution. Which goes back to our prophecy theory that Violet is prophesized as the weapon. Xaden might not know any of this prophecy stuff, but I think that he at least knew lightning would kill Venom somehow. And this is further backed up by Tarn telling Violet, quote, with a signet like that, you are the best hope the kingdom has against the hordes of evil that seek to harm it. We know that Tarn knows about the venom. Do you recall, Karen, what a group of wyvern are called? Like a group of dragons is a riot and a group of wyvern is a...
I do not remember.
Horde. They're called a horde. That line that he says literally means you are the best hope the kingdom has against the group of wyvern that seek to harm it. When I tell you, I like screamed when I read this. Yeah.
Oh, I kind of have mixed feelings about it.
Oh, about what?
It's great that if there's a prophecy, she's the answer to that prophecy. She's already grappling with being a weapon. So if everyone that's important to her is also seeing her as a weapon, I feel like that's going to cause more of an internal struggle.
You're right. You are. And she's not ready to hear it yet, which is why I think he says it the way he did here. And of course, she doesn't know the extent, right? She thinks he just means like general protecting, but we can infer now that we have more context that it's more. And she grapples with that at the end when she realizes that she can kill them and all throughout Iron Flame, right? And so she even says on the mountaintop that without the crossbolts, that she's the best weapon they have. She calls herself that in Iron Flame. In Onyx Storm, I think we're going to see her come into that in a positive light. And that's why she grapples with being a weapon at all in this part of this chapter, right? Because she thinks of it as a negative thing that will be used by other people. But what I think that Xaden sort of hits on and gets across decently well is that she can do that to protect people. And yes, she's still a weapon, but it's better to have and be a weapon when it comes to saving the lives of the people you love than to not have access to a weapon at all. But that's hard. That's difficult. I do appreciate that you connected that, though. And as you're saying right there, this shows us that Tarn seemed to know that Violet's signet could kill Venom, further supporting that Xaden likely did too. Now, how they knew this, that lightning wielders could. I don't know if it's in one of the books or it's passed down from folklore. Dane says there hasn't been a lightning wielder in more than a century. And of course, this was to show how rare and important Violet is, but she's not just a lightning wielder, right? Mm-mm. I think that this shows that there may never have been any other energy wielder, since no one assumed that she could be that. They all assumed lightning wielder. But at the very least, that there is no lightning wielder alive that she could compare herself to have known that her signet was different. It also makes me wonder if that previous lightning wielder or any lightning wielder could kill Venin, or if only energy wielders who can shape into lightning can. And that would blend into the prophecy theory about Violet.
Right.
I do lean that it's any lightning wielder and that would be how Taryn and Xaden know.
That makes sense to me.
We have to remember, and we'll come across it at some point in the chapters, but they say that they're looking for this weapon, right?
Yeah.
That will defeat Venin. One, I assumed immediately that would be Violet. But it is interesting to think about if they've been looking for that long, then clearly it's not a lightning wielder, because they've had one of those at least a century or so ago. So that sort of supports the idea that Violet could be that as the energy signet specific that can also do lightning, but I don't...
Yeah, either one of those is really interesting.
Okay, and then we have to talk about the line, and I can't help but wonder if somewhere on some plane of existence, Malik sits on his throne, angry that I stole a soul from his grasp. But then again, I gave him Jax. So Violet is talking about Liam cheating death, and how she basically thinks that she exchanged Liam's life for Jax. But now we know she didn't, because Jack never died. Now, this could play more into the gods having a bigger role in this series, but really, I think it was just some really nasty, heartbreaking foreshadowing, Rebecca, that Liam was going to die, and we just didn't know it at the time.
Oh, I had this very highlighted in my book. And I'm not a big highlighter of books, but the fact that she mentions that she cheated death pretty much with saving Liam's life. And now in hindsight, I do agree. I think it was just like a very mean way to foreshadow. Not mean, but a way to foreshadow.
No, it was mean. It was mean. Taking Liam's life was mean of Rebecca to do.
That was mean.
And I think it's not only foreshadowing, like it's nothing we could have known right then, because we all thought that Jack was dead. So we thought that she was right, that she had exchanged a soul. And I thought at the time that could just mean that is the case. It's just now knowing that it seems like Malik took Liam's life right after, because he wasn't ever given anything else. And that's interesting for anyone that Violet saves without exchanging a death. And how does Malik feel about Venin? Interesting.
That is very interesting.
But that's if he has a bigger role. I don't know. Violet seems to give him a lot of agency in their lives. So, And finally, to continue building on our prophecy theory, we get another mine reference from Andarna when she tells Vi, "I'm proud you're mine." It's mentioned too often to not be significant. I'm just saying, even though it is very sweet and very heartwarming.
Yeah. And we talked about it a little earlier that Violet is what Andarna has. And so I love it even more whenever she's proud that Violet is hers and that she continually calls her mine, because she is hers.
I know. I'm really excited for the development of their relationship. I really hope that Rebecca doesn't take that as an excuse to off Taryn. Anyways, and that concludes our episode. I will as well. Well, I won't, because it's not going to happen.
Nope.
And if it does, I might not ever read the rest of the book. Anyways.
Podcast over. Oh, and because there were no scalp prickling or Dane face touching moments, that wraps up chapters 28 and 29. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to join us for our next episode where we will deep dive into chapters 30 and 31.
Spicy. If you are looking for ways to support us so we can continue to make high quality content, please leave us a review, check out our Patreon, give us a follow over on socials, and share to all of your Fourth Wing friends.
As always, we encourage you to email us all of your thoughts, theories, and suggestions. Drop them below if you are watching on YouTube, or join us over on Discord.
Until next week, dearest fantasy readers, prepare yourselves to get spicy as we continue our journey through the Empyrean series. I can't wait for next episode.
Oh my gosh. How are we going to get through it is the question.
So
How?
Oh, it's going to be fun.
And then
Hang on.
Violet...
Hey, sorry, I had to fix my nose. That looked weird in video.
And then... and then... Hannah!
I'm sorry, okay.
You know what we should do is, have you seen how people edit those videos? Like the Gen Z intern edited the videos and it's just them breathing awkwardly and stuff. Anyways.
Peter, if you catch any of those, let's just save them in a file for socials. Anyways, okay.
Hannah, our Easter egg champion Hannah, our champion Easter egg finder.
Wait, say it again. My video's going to be so messed up.
I have to know, Hannah, our champion... This is where my brain's at today. And then Xaden finally finds Xaden's bond in her...
You said Xaden twice. You said then Xaden finds Xaden's bond.
You know, happens to the best of us. Sorry.